Canada's economy served up a big surprise this morning, and not the good kind. The country lost 84,000 jobs last month. That's one of the worst monthly drops ever outside of the pandemic. Speaking from Norway, Prime Minister Mark Carney blamed U.S. tariffs, but also said Canada is outperforming the U.S.
Given the scale of the trade actions, the uncertainty that is associated as well as with the trade actions by the United States, that is causing big adjustments in the Canadian economy. We've created over 80,000 jobs net over the last 6 months. The United States has created 6,000 jobs. Okay, the United States, 11 times the size of our economy.
We checked the numbers, and in fact, the U.S. has actually lost, not gained, 6,000 jobs over the last 6 months. Still, Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre described the numbers as a political failure.
It is true. We do have global problems, and we cannot discount or try to control what President Trump does. But all the countries are facing those tariffs. None of them have a shrinking economy.
So, between those job losses and rising gas prices, could the political ground start to shift under the Prime Minister's feet? Time now for our party insiders. Gary Keller is a former Chief of Staff to Conservative ministers. And here in studio, Greg McEachern is a former Liberal ministerial advisor, and Melanie Richer is a former Communications Director for the NDP. Welcome, everyone. Gary, I want to start with you. Bad news jobs report, no other way to put it. How does Pierre Poilievre capitalize that, other than to just blame Mark Carney for it?
Well, and I think you saw that Mr. Poilievre's comments. Of course, it's his job to hold the government to account for jobs numbers. And as Mr. Poilievre points out, yes, it can't all be laid at the feet of the government and Mr. Carney. But at the same time, Mr. Poilievre is going to make the case of why the Conservative Party has a better policy suite, a better opportunity to try to create jobs by making smaller government, getting government out of the way, and lowering taxes along the way. So I think it's a tailor-made opportunity for Mr. Poilievre to make the case for why his economic plan is better. But it's going to take some time to do that. But obviously these are not good numbers for the government, and it goes back to the whole equation. Yes, Mr. Carney is there to preach getting things done for Canadians, but at some point delivery has to start showing up, or politicians, no matter who they are, will start paying a political price sometime along the way.
Yeah, Greg, if these job reports keep coming like this, how much of a problem is that for the Prime Minister, even if Canadians understand that there's a lot of global factors involved? When does he start to pay the price for the numbers we're seeing today if they continue?
If they continue. It's not just a problem for the Prime Minister, it's going to be a problem for a lot of families. And I think part of the dread last year around Donald Trump and what he was talking about in terms of tariffs, and I will not entirely agree with the Conservative leader. There's, in a lot of ways, because of the free trade agreement that we have, Canada has been a bit protected in terms of the way some of the other countries have been treated by the United States. But it'll be devastating. But here's the thing is, this caught a lot of people by surprise today. And if you look back at a number of months, it could be inflation, it could be the job numbers. I'm looking forward to Peter Armstrong's newsletter on Monday, because there's been a lot of, and he explains things for pretty people like myself, but there's been a lot of months where the expectation was going to be very negative and it was instead very positive. This was a time where we thought it was going to be, we were told it would be positive and it's very negative. You mentioned the job losses in the United States. If you look at the U.S. coverage today, and it's pretty negative towards President Trump. If you look at the polling, whether it's around affordability or the Iran war, it's very negative. And if the president has done this foray into Iran for distraction reasons, it's causing a lot of Americans to look at the price of gas. So I do think that, I'm not trying to pivot to the United States, but the United States is the cause of a lot of the challenges we have right now.
Melanie, do you think if this does go on, or the longer this goes on, and I think most economists believe that we're not going to suddenly have a massive turnaround next month or the month after, does this give space for the NDP and its small, but I'm sure you think mighty caucus, to get out its message more predominantly that it is the party of the worker. Is that an opening for the NDP?
Right. I think that that's a massive opportunity. We've talked a lot about the opportunity for the progressive space to be taken up with Carney's or with the Prime Minister's shifts to the middle, but I think that's actually where the opportunity is. It is the talking about affordability. It is talking about the cost of living. It is talking directly to workers. We've been saying for a while, or not we, I've been saying for a while, the Prime Minister, I don't want to give you credit for this and then your people will be upset with you. The Prime Minister keeps talking about how he's going to reinforce our industry, how he's going to protect our economy or solidify our economy. But when you talk about industry and economy, you're often not talking about people. You're not talking about how that help is getting to people directly. And Gary said it a little bit earlier if you're not getting to deliver that impact to people, if people are not seeing the change to their lives, yes, there's a lot of empathy for dealing with Donald Trump and what that means. And I think people still have a lot of confidence that the Prime Minister is the person to manage that. But the more he's unable to tell people how he's helping them in a real way in their everyday lives, I think the more problematic it'll be for the Prime Minister and the bigger the opportunity is for the NDP. And we know that, this Prime Minister has a harder time with that connect, has a harder time with the showing people that he understands what they're going through and acting on that. So I think that that's a massive opportunity for the NDP. I think not traditionally, in the last year, in the lead up to the last election, we saw Pierre Poilievre take up that space. I don't think he's able to in the same way right now, which is why I think it's a bit more of an opportunity for the NDP, because he's having a hard time being the serious opposition to Mark Carney. It's almost like he's also lost his ability to talk about cost of living in the same way. So I think that is where there's a massive opportunity for the NDP and whoever the next leader is at the end of the month.
I'm sure Gary might take issue with that, but before we get to that, Greg, you mentioned oil prices. Is that set to also become a problem and make the focus more on affordability, which, well, it's not that the Liberal government has been talking about it, but they don't feel like they've been doing anything to really make life more affordable. Are oil prices going to be a problem as well? Yeah,
and it's, initially, the increase in oil prices was the initial reaction seemed to be in Canada was, oh, this is going to be good for Alberta. But wait for that second shoe to fall, and it could be fertilizer affecting our farmers. We've talked a lot about canola and the challenges in Saskatchewan. Prices for everything go up. I was listening to a report about how cooking oil in India is going to be a challenge. All of these things will have reverberations. We all know that when President Trump will react is when the markets react. You can see in the last couple of days in his administration where there is confusion. They are getting caught up in, they said that they eliminated the nuclear threat last fall, but now they had to go back in. Nothing makes sense. It's not consistent. I'm hoping because of that and the fact that they're not getting a win out of it, it's not moving the polls. And actually, this week, there was polling that showed that for the first time, the Democrats might not just take the House, but take the Senate as well. And this is where rubber hits the road. If you're a Republican congressman, a Republican senator, and you start to think, okay, I've got to save the furniture being my job, things could get very interesting.
Now, Gary, affordability has been a bread and butter issue for not just the Conservatives, but for Pierre Poilievre. That's what he ran on, and it's what he was talking about for years, even before Mark Carney became Prime Minister. Again, in terms of using this opportunity to really hone in on an issue that has worked for him, what kind of opportunity is this? And I assume you probably disagree with Mel that he isn't framed to communicate this clearly, but will Canadians actually listen to him?
Well, look, I think there's an opportunity for all opposition parties, whether it's the New Democrats or the Conservatives or the Bloc Québécois in Quebec, especially with by-elections, and I know we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But, the challenge that Mr. Carney has had during his prime ministership is that sometimes the rhetoric doesn't meet the reality. And he does tend to have communications problems, some of which are not his own doing. Just the other day in the House of Commons, Greta Robertson, as housing minister, remember this is the same housing minister back in May of last year, said that, well, house prices weren't exactly a problem. Strike one there. This week in the House of Commons, he said, well, Canadians can't afford housing because of the war in Iran. Excuse me? That is nothing to do with house prices. We don't import wood to build houses or concrete to build houses from Iran. That's just completely wrong. And Evan Solomon, the AI minister, again started blaming these job numbers and the affordability crisis and February and January's job numbers on the Iran situation which started in March. So these people aren't exactly helping the cause. And when some of this stuff starts to hit home and job numbers aren't improving over time, if they don't improve over time, that's where voters look for other opportunities. And again, if you look back to the last election campaign, when the first 3 weeks of the campaign were largely about Donald Trump, the Liberals had a lead. When the last 2 weeks of the campaign were largely about affordability and the cost of living, that's where the gap narrowed and became a very, very close election on election night. So, yeah, there's opportunity there for Mr. Poilievre, for other opposition parties, and a challenge for the government to manage.
Mel, speaking of opportunity, with oil prices the way they are and probably staying there for a while, is this an opportunity for the NDP to bring back, well, not bring back, but actually break through the noise with its excess profit tax that it would like to see brought in? Is that a chance for the NDP to get some traction on that?
Absolutely. When Greg started talking about the pricing, that's exactly what I thought of. Jim Stanford, an economist, was talking about this week that it is way too soon for what's happening in Iran to impact our prices, and yet the prices are up 30 cents on a bad day and 40 cents on what was a good day, even 50 cents on what was a good day, just a few weeks beforehand. So the fact that people are, gouging folks at the pump is a massive, I can say that, sorry, or maybe I can say it a little bit easier, is a massive opportunity for the NDP to talk about how this is the failure of the Liberal government to take action. Obviously, there was a lot of traction with this subject when Justin Trudeau was still leader. We haven't necessarily seen the same playing field since Mark Carney has been leader, but I do think that is a big opportunity for the NDP to bring that up, and it's timely because folks are feeling it if they drive a car and they're seeing it at the pump. So definitely an opportunity for them to bring that back and to make a little bit of noise on an issue that is seen as more progressive, is seen as what's fair, but also would definitely put money back in people's pockets.